Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to tackle something that I know drives so many English learners crazy. You know, those little mistakes that just keep popping up and prevent your English from sounding totally natural. Well, we're going to fix them, one by one. So, let's dive right in. So, you've spent all this time on grammar. You know the words, but when you actually speak, you get that nagging feeling that something's just a little off. It's a super common feeling, and let me tell you, you are definitely not alone in this. Look, if any of these sound familiar, then you are in exactly the right place. We're not going to go back to square one here. Instead, we're going to fine-tune your English with some really practical, easy-to-remember fixes that are going to make a huge difference in how confident and fluent you sound. Okay, so here's the game plan. We've broken it down into three parts. First, we're going to work on building better sentences. Then we'll zoom in on choosing the right word. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with mastering everyday conversation. All right, part one, building better sentences. Think of these as the foundation. These are the core structures that, once you get them right, will instantly make your English feel so much stronger and clearer. Let's kick things off with a total classic. You want to compare two things, so you reach for the word more. But this is a super common trip up with short adjectives. It's not more easy, it's easier. It's not more cheap, it's cheaper. And definitely not more good, it's better. And the fix? It's actually way simpler than you think. Okay, check this out. It's really not that complicated. For short one-syllable words like strong, you just add er to the end. Stronger. If the word ends in a y like easy, you just swap that y for an I and add er. Easier. You only use more for the longer words, like more expensive. And yeah, okay, there are a few oddballs like good becoming better that you just kind of have to memorize. See? Once you break it down, it's pretty straightforward. All right, next up, another tiny little word that causes huge problems, to. I see this one all the time after words like must, can, or should, but that little to just doesn't belong there. Here's the trick. Think of these modal verbs as special helper verbs. They connect directly to the main action. There's nothing in between. You can go, you should listen, you must wait. Now, you might be thinking, what about have to? Well, that's kind of its own thing. It's a different phrase. For these true modal verbs, just remember, no to. Simple as that. So, how do you talk about how you use your time? A lot of people naturally want to use the word for, which totally makes sense in a lot of other languages. But in English, we've got this specific little pattern you got to follow. So here's the pattern you need to lock into your brain. You spend a period of time doing something. So, you spend 2 hours cooking. She spends her mornings studying. They spend the whole weekend cleaning. Once you get the hang of this rhythm, it just becomes second nature. You won't even have to think about it. All right, moving on to part two, choosing the right word. So our sentence structure is looking way better. Now let's zoom in on some of those small, tricky words that can take your English from just being correct to sounding really natural. Guess who's back? Our little friend, to, or actually the lack of to. It disappears again with certain words about movement. The big one is home. We always say go home, never go to home. Why? Well, because words like home, here, there, even downtown are adverbs. They already have the idea of direction built right in. Here's a quick trick. If you can swap out the location with here or there, you probably don't need to. Oh man, as versus like. This one trips up everyone, and it's so important because it can completely change the meaning of what you're saying. If engineering is your actual job, you work as an engineer. If you say you work like an engineer, it means you're not one, but you kind of act like one. See, that small word choice makes a huge difference. So here's the dead simple way to remember it. Use as for a role, a function, your reality. Use like for a comparison, when something is similar to something else. He eats like a horse. She works as a designer. That's it. That's the key. Okay, let's talk about showing who owns what, especially when it comes to people. Native speakers will almost always just use the possessive s. I mean, sure, the brother of Marco is technically correct, but it just sounds a little, I don't know, robotic, a little clunky. Marco's brother is just so much smoother and faster. You should save that of structure for things like the leg of the table or the color of the sky. All right, we're in the home stretch now, part 3. We've tightened up our sentences, we've picked better words, and now this is where we put it all together. We're going to talk about sounding natural and confident in actual, real-world conversations. Asking questions, this can be so tricky, right? A super common mix-up is using the wrong helper verb or getting the word order mixed up. For action verbs, like live, you need a little helper like do or does. But if you're asking about what something is, well then is or are is your main verb. Getting this right is so key for clear communication. Okay, so the rule of thumb is this. If there's an action in the question, like live, work, or eat, you're going to need do or does to help you out. Where do you live? But if you're just describing something, a state of being, you'll use a form of be. What is she like? Now, let's walk through a super common scenario, meeting someone new. When you first meet, it's nice to meet you. The most common and natural way to ask about their job is simply, what do you do? And here's the pro tip. When you're leaving, you switch it up to, it was nice meeting you. That little change to the past tense and that ing form signals that the conversation is over. It's a perfect natural way to say goodbye. Ooh, this is a good one. This is a very subtle but very important piece of modern social English. If someone asks you how something was, and you say, it was fine, you're not giving it a good review. In today's English, fine pretty much means, meh, it was just okay. If you actually liked it, you need a stronger word, like great, awesome, or fantastic. Okay, our last big point, and this one is huge, talking about your experiences. It all comes down to one simple question. Are you talking about a specific time in the past? If you're talking generally about your life experience, you use the present perfect. I've been to that restaurant. It means sometime in my life, I went there. But the second you name the time, like yesterday, last week, in 2019, bam, you have to switch to the simple past. I went to that restaurant yesterday. That specific time is the trigger. All right, so let's pull it all together real quick. First, we fixed our sentences, checking comparatives, modals, and verbs with ing. Second, we polished up our word choice, remembering the rules for little words like to, as, and like, and possessives. And third, we focused on real conversation skills. These aren't some crazy, complicated grammar theories. They're small tweaks that make a massive difference. And that's a wrap. But look, the goal here isn't just to know the stuff, it's to use it. So I've got a question for you. What's the one tip from this that you are going to actively try to use today? Pick one and focus on it, because that's how you really, truly level up. Thanks for hanging out with me.